Hi, I'm Mark Scherer. I'm the CEO and founder of Encompass Life and the host of the Encompassing Life Podcast. And today we have Ryan Larson, and Ryan is with Pro Sports, and he's out of Silverdale, Washington, and really interesting guy. I'm getting to know him a little bit, and he is talking about concussions and how how they come about, the amount of force that's involved with them, what you can do to treat them, and so I'm really glad to have him on here because this is something that's very prevalent today in today's society, and the effects can be cumulative as you keep getting one, get one here, get one there, and as you get older, these effects will show up in your older age as well. So Ryan, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Appreciate you having me.
You're welcome, sir. So you were sharing one of the things you were sharing is how many different ways there is to get a concussion.
Yeah.
Could you kind of go over some of
Yeah.
that?
Yep. So, a lot of times people feel like the concussion is based on just from a hit to the head. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. You can get a concussion from several different ways, whether that's a motor vehicle accident, being in a car accident, falling. It doesn't even have to be from a very significant height, but falls or bike accidents. Playing sports is definitely a big one with a lot of young athletes, but even as we age is another one, the recreational activities. Getting the contact to the body is sometimes enough to be able to sustain enough force to create the concussion.
Yeah. So you were talking about we're being like you can see stars get knocked out a little bit,
Yeah.
uh, you maybe get a little loopy for a second, and
Yeah,
all those things are indicators you may have one, right?
definitely. Yeah.
And what should people know about it?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot that people can know about it. One of the biggest things, and probably the most important that I try and educate people on, is the fact that we're trying to advocate for early treatment of some of the symptoms and side effects that come with having the concussion. It used to be kind of standard that people would just go and try and rest for a week or two, not do their sport or activity. But the research is really supporting otherwise at this time, trying to be proactive in getting the neck checked out, right? Getting vision checked out, getting balance checked out, doing some sort of more of a comprehensive assessment and evaluation of what is making those symptoms continue to be prevalent.
And what are some of the treatments that you guys are doing for them?
Yeah. Yeah. So if I find that there might be something going on in the neck or with a whiplash type injury, majority of the time, the whiplash injury is where the symptoms are going to be most prolonged and overlooked. We want to try and make sure that we're looking pretty closely at the neck and whether that's alignment, whether that's muscle imbalances, whether that's functional control and support and stability of the head and neck. But we want to just try and make sure that that is all as good as it can be. A lot of the symptoms that come from a whiplash injury very closely mimic that of a concussion. And so, one of the things that we were talking earlier about is how those symptoms overlap. And typically, for about 70% of individuals that sustain a concussion, after about 7 to 10 days, those symptoms should resolve. And if they're not resolving, there is something much more significant going on. And a lot of the times, it's that neck, right? The cervical component. And then, treatment for that would be working some soft tissue stuff, working some joint mobilizations, working some strength and stabilization control through the head, neck, shoulders, and then safely going through a return to their work or a return to their school, learning, and then athletic participation again. Yep.
Gotcha. And you were one of the things you were talking about is like it's the concussion in the brain level is like you see, you were describing like a bowl of Jello. Then
Yeah,
you shake a bowl of Jello, and you
yeah,
can see the waves in it and stuff. And it
yeah,
doesn't really have to. What I had heard was a concussion was caused by like when the brain hits the sidewall of the head, and then maybe bounces to the other side, and whatever that back and forth jarring and hitting is what's causing it. You're saying that it's more of the stretching of the neurons.
yeah, yep. It's actually really interesting. As the brain sits inside the skull and you sustain that concussion type injury, the brain is essentially getting rotated really quickly and shook. And as it does that, the tissue stretches, and all of those nerves and neuron firings, they basically the neuron becomes excitable, and you get this significant firing of all of these nerves, and it just overloads the brain. And
Huh.
so you get there's a lot that goes on at a biological cellular level with that, but basically you're overloading that brain, and it wants to shut down, and it uses an excessive amount of energy when all of that firing happens. And then coming down out of that, your brain is then depleted of that energy, and that's where you get the things like the brain fog, confusion, sleepiness, right, and drowsiness, that kind of stuff, and sometimes even associated with the amnesia, memory loss.
Huh. Interesting. So for the brain injury itself, what do you do to alleviate that? I mean, you're talking about from the whiplash and the
Yeah,
soft tissues and getting mobility back and all those things. But what
yep,
about for the brain itself?
yep.
Put some ice on it. I mean,
No,
go have a
not
shot of
exactly.
tequila. Like
Yeah, not alcohol.
not
No,
alcohol.
no, alcohol actually is a big no-no. Yeah, we want to
Right.
try and minimize a lot of sugar, right? Minimize the alcohol. The way the body processes that actually increases an inflammatory reaction. We want to minimize that. Yeah, so diet is actually a huge component of that.
Uh-huh.
Diet that's more like concentrated in good fiber and good fat is
Uh-huh.
actually really, really good. There are some other, fruits and vegetables that can also be a little bit more specific towards the brain healing.
Uh-huh.
That is pretty important. So if
Uh-huh.
if I have someone that might come into my clinic, and I always ask them the question, "What is your diet like?" And they're like, "Well, I eat McDonald's, or I eat a lot of candy throughout my day at school, or something like that." I'm like, "Okay, well, we got to stop that." And so definitely, diet is a huge way that we can help facilitate the brain healing, and some of the tissue healing as well. But one of the other things is, we want to see how much is affected by that nerve firing, or did everything reset how it was supposed to, or is there something going on with your vision? Is there something going on with your balance? Is there something going on with your body's ability to regulate your heart rate? So sometimes they really have the injured individual will have nothing really physically wrong, but they start to try and get back to running, and their heart rate increases and their symptoms go haywire. And so the brain helps to regulate your autonomic nervous system.
Right.
And so your ability to control, as your heart rate goes up, your brain helps to kind of give you that increase and decrease as you recover, right?
Right.
Well, what will happen sometimes is that heart rate will elevate, but your body can no longer bring it back down, or
Hmm.
bring it back down in an appropriate manner that we would expect it to. And so the respiratory rate would be elevated, the heart rate would be elevated, and then they get increase in headache. They start to get irritable. They start to really get fatigued, and different things like that. And so there are a couple tests. One in particular is a treadmill test, and it's a walk test. I have them do this particular program of walking on the treadmill, and we are specifically trying to get that heart rate elevated and see how their symptoms either come on or don't. And then that's one of the main indicators of whether or not they are safe to be able to start to return back to activity. So if they fail that treadmill test, they aren't going back to doing a lot of their activity.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get an answer to the question. So what do you like? See, you said food is a big thing for treatment.
Yeah,
But, but what is there something that you can do, like exercises the person does,
yeah, yeah,
what do you
yeah,
do to get the thing to fire, the brain to start firing again correctly?
yep, yep, yep. And that's all part of that. The treadmill test. We do a whole bunch of like strength tests to see if there are any nerves that are affected that may be causing a decrease in the engagement on one arm versus the other arm, or a
I
leg
gotcha.
versus the other leg. Yep, stabilization of the head and the neck. And then if we do find anything like that, then we want to try and improve it. Yep. So there'll be a whole bunch of exercises then that we might focus on shoulder
Gotcha.
stabilization or engagement. There may be some numbness that's associated in the arm. And we might try and work on some exercises, movement activities, or things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that
To
to help
get
restore that.
to build the connections back in
Yeah.
public. Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha. So you're working at it not just from the brain side, but from the body side.
Yeah. Yep. Two-way connection.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, two-way connection. It's like if you want to get a cat to open his mouth, step on his tail.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so interesting. Yep. So you're taking more of a whole body uh,
Yep. Absolutely.
approach. Really, yeah,
Absolutely.
yep. I just spoke at a convention for. You ever heard of CPK, chiropractic with applied kinesiology? With
Oh, actually, yes. Yes, I have.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They just had a convention or whatever conference in where was it? Where have I just been recently? Oh, Kansas City. It was in
Okay.
Kansas City. I spoke at the convention there, and it's really cool the way they're treating whole body symptoms. And really working for not only the spine as being able to manipulate the spine, but to get the nerves, the body and the brain to start talking to build those neurological connections so they can get those muscles to release, and then the body starts to go back into stasis as well.
Right.
Homeostasis. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm like, oh, this is different. I'm used to more, you know, hit me hard, get a hammer on me or whatever. As it was,
Yeah.
I got to try quite a bit of this stuff out, and it was different. It was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's fun stuff.
yeah. Um, so what is so people come to see you, and about what is the duration of an appointment with you?
Sure.
An
Sure. Most.
individual appointment, and then how many appointments do people generally
Yeah.
make?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our evaluations are typically about an hour, and I'll sit down with the individual, and if they bring any family in, we definitely go through a lot with them, and we talk with them a lot. If they're relatively early on after that concussion, it's always recommended for them to bring someone so that they
Uh,
have an understanding of what's happening and going on. And as we talk about a lot of these different things, I have handouts for them. But yeah, initial evaluations are usually around 60 minutes. And then follow-ups are anywhere between 45 and 60 minutes. And I will sometimes see these individuals one or two times during a week. And depending on how well they progress, sometimes they progress relatively quickly, and I may only see them 3 or 4 visits.
mhm.
And sometimes it's much more extensive, or like I will get some patients that have been dealing with these symptoms maybe for 5, 8 years, and they just haven't found anybody that's been able to really help, get them out of this funk.
Yeah,
And then we go through our process, and so those individuals, it's usually a little bit longer,
right.
and I might see them for 2 or 3 months, kind of a
Gotcha.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes with the chronic patterns, I've noticed a person begins to identify with the patterns rather than their healed
yeah,
state. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot
So,
of other things, the layers of the onion you got to keep peeling. Yeah,
right. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Being able to switch that identity is sometimes can be pretty tough. Sometimes.
yeah.
Cool. Um, what else would you like to share with people who are listening to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is just understanding that, you know, one of the biggest misconceptions or myths with the concussions, is when they go to the doctor. The doctor is very, very upfront typically about, oh, you just need to really do nothing. Take 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I just can't stress
Here's a
enough
couple Tylenol for the headaches.
right,
You'll be
right,
fine.
yeah. I just can't stress enough that there is a much better and more efficient way of dealing with concussion. And sometimes, yes, sometimes there are those cases where I will see them in the office and I'll be like, you know what? You really do need to completely, you're still trying to push too much, or you had this car accident, but they might have young children, or they might have a job where they just they can't stop. And sometimes you just have to tell them, like, okay, hey, you know what, this is your time where if we don't stop this, we aren't going to be able to get your symptoms under control. And those are some much more rare instances, but sometimes, yeah, that absolute rest is a little bit more necessary.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no. There are so many different things that we can look at and we can try and address and keep those individuals as much involved in their day-to-day life as possible,
Yeah.
because we don't want to feed more and more into the psychological side of it, to where if we restrict them, keep them in a dark room, or make them be away from their tablets or be away from their friends and their sports teams, the longer we do that, the more and more difficult it is to reintroduce them to all of that kind of stuff. And so we want, and especially in this day and age when everything is technology, I have these kids come in, they're like, well, my parents won't let me be on my tablet, or they won't let me be on my phone and texting my friends, and now I don't know what's going on. I'm behind on my homework. Like, we need to be able as healthcare professionals to understand what is acceptable
Yeah.
and what is appropriate for these kids to be able to do. Again, whether that's an injured student athlete or if it's an adult, most of, as we are right now on a Zoom, right? So doing business in an electronic digital world is very, very important. And if we completely eliminate all of that, we could even be setting back some of their healing even longer.
Gotcha. Um, hmm. I was going to ask you now. I had a question of somebody. Um, so yeah, sometime I think it's like some people get so busy, and maybe the universe gives them a slap up against the head and go, man, it's time for you to kind of take some time off and do some reflection too. Like
Yeah,
find the blessing in all
yeah,
this stuff, and start to quiet your life down and do some little personal reflecting. I think sometimes I think of all this stuff trying to kind of show up in people's life for blessings.
yeah,
Everything I've had in my life, um, issues I've had. I thought they were like really terrible at the time. I always found a blessing, and it took me maybe take me a while, but I did. So, can you hold just a sec?
yeah.
All right, we're back.
All right.
Pardon. Um, yeah, sometimes it's be able to find a blessing in all this stuff and go, hey man, this is actually something that I actually required to do.
Yeah,
Sometimes that's a big deal.
yeah,
Until I notice until people can actually, for the people we work with, until people can actually find that, then they struggle with the they keep making the thing wrong, which drags on the healing process even longer.
yeah,
But they get the right mental attitude, man, it can really help with things as well. Cool. So how do people get in touch with you, sir?
yeah, yeah. So we do have if they're wanting to communicate via email, I'm definitely open to doing that. We have clinic phone. They can call in the clinic,
Uh-huh.
request whether they want a
Can
visit
you give
or
them the number real quick, sir?
yeah. Uh, our Silverdale clinic number 360 633 8888.
And one more time, what's the name of the company?
Pro Sport.
And what's your website?
So it should just be if they search up Pro Sport,
.com?
yep, they should be able to find that out in Washington. They might have to, if they Google search it in Washington. I don't do much of the marketing and all that kind of fun stuff, but
Uh,
it should be it might be prosportwa.com. I believe.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you have offices in Silverdale and you said
And
in Tacoma?
Gig Harbor. Gig
Gig
Harbor.
Harbor.
Yep.
Gotcha. Cool. And about how many people are in your office?
So altogether, clinical staff, we have about 50.
That's so
Um,
pretty good in
so
both locations.
yeah, between both locations, we have
Awesome.
about 50, and then close to 70 total with our front desk
Administration.
and management. Yeah, billing, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. So I have one other question. One other question for you, Ryan.
Yeah.
As I end podcasts on this one. What do you love about life?
Ooh, what do I love about life? So many things. Uh, yeah, I think one of the biggest things is personal interaction. Um, I feel very fortunate to be in a business profession where I get to communicate and interact with people every day. And I get to see people when they are usually not at their best. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I get to spend a lot of time with them and help take them from maybe when they're not at their best to when they're quite a bit better. Um,
Gotcha.
and
So
and that is
you get to
really,
see the spark return.
yeah, yeah, that is really, really cool. Yeah,
Yeah. That's what I love doing too. When
yeah,
people, by the time people come in, like, you know, like it's just like it's a dog eat dog world, and they're wearing milk bone underwear,
yeah,
and they,
yeah,
you're like, oh, drudgery, 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 no hope, and all of a sudden they get the spark return again, and it's
yeah,
beautiful to see somebody go through that.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
well, Ryan, pleasure having you on here, and keep doing what you're doing, and I think what you're doing is really important for people, and blessings to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great chatting with you.
You too, sir.